Hey everybody, just sat down to shoot a video about my skinny clown loach, and on cue, there it pops up right behind me. I did just throw some shrimp pellets in the tank for it. Hopefully it was going to come out, and it did. So now we'll get to have a little bit of a look at it as we talk about it. So my regular viewers will know that it's been really emaciated. It was getting skinnier and skinnier, and this has been going on for a long time. I had another one that died recently because it got so skinny, and I've had some other experiences in the past with specifically clown loaches getting very skinny and eventually dying. Oftentimes not even really growing ever from the day I get them. I'd get a couple, one would grow, the other one would just sort of stay the same size. And this has happened 2 or 3 times over the years, and I never knew what was going on with it. And I am going to talk a little bit more in detail about just the whole process, symptomatically what was going on and everything. But first I want to talk about how we eventually got to the treatment, because I think that's going to be the important part to deal with right now. One of my viewers eventually pointed out to me that there is a condition known as skinny Loach disease, and I should look into it because that's probably what was going on with my clown loach. Apparently that's something that happens fairly commonly with clown loaches, specifically clown loaches for some reason. I don't know why. Again, I'm going to talk more about that later in the video. So anyway, I looked it up. I found a wealth of information about it. All of it pointed to the same thing. It was a very specific type of intestinal parasite that clown loaches apparently very commonly get or come home from the store with. It's a fairly long, slow process. Most of what I was seeing lined up with my own experience. I don't know how long that process necessarily would take as they described it in the various places I looked. Again, all the same information was in most resources I found. And all of them were very specific about the treatment of it, and that was levamisole hydrochloride. And the only argument out of all the different resources I read was the way to administer the levamisole. You either did it through the whole tank method, where the fish absorb it through their skin and gills, or you could do it through the food method, where you specifically feed fish that has food that's had the levamisole soaked in it. And so that was the only argument, how to give the levamisole to these sick loaches, because that's what the treatment was. It was levamisole. There was no alternatives. There was no, if that doesn't work, try this. It was very specific. Everywhere I looked, this is what it is. This is what the treatment is. And so that's what I had been doing. I had been giving it levamisole. I tried the food. I tried the full tank method, and just nothing was happening. Nothing was working. I don't know, 3, 4 treatments, nothing was happening. Nothing was changing. And so I decided to stop and think about it for a minute. If I'm being told this is what your problem is and this is what the cure is, and I'm doing the cure and nothing's happening, then something's not right. Either this isn't what I have, or there are other things that may cure this. And I thought about it and decided in either case it's worth trying some other type of sort of internal intestinal parasite type medication. And I looked online, and pretty much the first thing that always comes up is API General Cure. And I happened to have a bunch of it in the other room, and it was enough to do this full 125-gallon tank and do a full treatment on it. And the full treatment involves 2 doses. You give it a dose, you wait 48 hours, you give it another dose, you wait 48 hours, and then you do a water change. I had given it a dose late at night, so towards the end of the day, I'll say. And so after 48 hours, it was kind of towards the end of the day again, and so I just pushed it off till the next day, and then I did another dose, and then I waited a few more days, and by then, the loach actually started looking better. The skinny loach in here that was again, to paraphrase Terry Pratchett, it was not only on death's door, but was well inside the hallway and was looking at the umbrella stand. That loach was far gone, and I did not have much hope for it coming back. And 4 or 5 days of the API General Cure, and it's noticeably putting weight on. I didn't want to say anything at first until I was really sure about it. I had noticed it within a few days of beginning the treatment that it really started looking better. Its color was coming back. It just looks better. And by the time I was certain that it wasn't just wishful thinking on my part, I shot some video of it. A lot of you by now, I'm sure, have probably seen it, and agree that the loach definitely looks better. So whatever was going on, levamisole was not what the cure was. It was the API general cure. And that supposedly is for internal and external parasites. It treats, just random, most things that will afflict the fish, commonly in the hobby. If you just got a fish that's getting skinnier and skinnier and you're not sure what's wrong with it, try the API general cure. I always thought that was kind of a, scattershot way of looking at it. Just throw medication at it in hopes that maybe some of this might work. And I even had somebody recommend using the API general cure to me. And I just sort of dismissed the idea without really giving it any consideration, because everything I read said, this is your problem, levamisole is your cure. And so I just kind of dismissed their comment and said, no, that's, I need to use the levamisole, that's what everything's telling me. And I really should have given it more consideration. That's not to say I should have just done what they said. By no means should I just do everything I'm told by my viewers. My fish room would be a disaster if I just did everything I was recommended by my viewers. But I should have just given it some consideration. Instead of just dismissing it out of hand, I should have thought about it a little bit. And I might have come to the conclusion that why not? I've got the general cure in the other room. It's not going to hurt. And maybe 6 weeks ago we could have done this, and I could have prevented, getting that fish up to death's door and perhaps even a little inside. But I didn't. Lesson learned there for me is maybe to, give more considerations to different ideas. But the big lesson here is, if you're told something is this way and your own eyes are showing you that that doesn't really seem to be the way it is, do you believe what you read, or do you believe what you're actually seeing in front of your own eyes? And in my case, what I read was that levamisole was the way to go, and that was going to solve all my clown loach problems. And what I was seeing was that it wasn't doing anything. It wasn't having any impact on my clown loach at all. And so just on a whim, I decided I'll give this API General Cure a shot, and that's what worked. And so now my loach is doing a lot better. But it took me a long time to figure out what was going on. This is where we're going to get into talking about what was going on with the loach and why it's just kind of weird. If it is a intestinal parasite, is it super specific only to clown loaches? I mean, literally that species of loach? Because I've had these clown loaches that got skinny like that over in my gourami tank, which has a lot of loaches in it, a lot of variety of loaches. I got dojo loaches in there, I've got an angelicus loach, I've got skunk loaches, and I've had these skinny clown loaches with those loaches, not to mention all the other fish, in the aquarium. So if it's an intestinal parasite, they're always problematic. They're always transmittable. The other fish will pick up the eggs or any segments of them, perhaps, depending on what type of parasite it is. Sometimes it's a segmented worm, sometimes it's eggs. I know it's all kind of gross, but that's, it gets passed on and gets put out into the tank. And my regular viewers know I'm not exactly a stickler for, pristine tanks and nothing in the bottom. And so if there's really a parasite in these loaches, why aren't any of my other fish suffering from this skinny disease? Why aren't any of my other loaches suffering from it, or any of the bottom-dwelling fish at least? I've got my chocolate zebra plecos in this tank. We just saw one the other day, all fat, plump belly. Everybody that's seen my catfish, I can't even think of what it is now, my striped Raphael catfish, that thing looks like a tadpole. It's so big, or so round. None of my other fish have ever caught this disease that this loach has for some reason. And that may be the way it is. It may be something that's really specific to a clown loach. I don't know. But that's been my observations. None of the other fish in this tank have ever got it. I did have one other clown loach in this tank die from it, and that clown loach came out of my gourami tank. That's the one that died. That's when my viewer said, hey, check out this skinny loach disease, that might be what you're dealing with. And that's when I began really trying to treat it. Up until then, I scratched my head. I didn't know what was going on, because no other fish was ever getting sick. And I just assumed, well, it can't be an intestinal parasite or something. Surely some other fish would have gotten it by now. And I've never seen another fish get skinny like that and die. I've had other fish die for mysterious reasons, or they've had swim bladder issues, or whatever. But I've never had any get like a wasting disease, which is what these loaches were getting. I've even got another clown loach in this tank that is fine. It's my biggest clown loach that I bought back in the day with my original batch where, you know, I was saying how one got, you know, kept growing normally and one stayed the same size. The big one in here is the one that kept growing normally. So I've had that loach, a clown loach, mixed with these other various skinny loaches that for years have suffered from this until eventually getting so skinny that they died off. And I mean that literally. I'm talking about several years of them just kind of not seeming to grow. And then eventually getting to the point where they're going the other direction. You know, they're starting to get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. And even that process takes another year for them to finally die. If you do nothing, if you just sit there and just watch and scratch your head and wonder what's going on here, it can take 3 or 4 years for these loaches to die, at least, again, in my experience. That's what I was seeing. So, is that some sort of intestinal parasite causing some wasting disease? I don't know. It just seems odd that it would take that long to kill the fish. It doesn't affect any other fish. It doesn't even always affect other clown loaches, as evidenced by my large clown loach that's in this tank that's never really seemed to be infected with it. But on that note, the other problem I was having with the levamisole, if it had ever worked, my concern was going to be that the levamisole doesn't kill whatever this parasite is that it's supposed to work on. It only stuns it. And I guess it detaches from the intestinal wall or something, and while it's stunned, it's passed out of the fish. So the fish will get it out of its system, but it's still alive in your tank and will recover and eventually can reinfect your fish and so on and so forth. I was going to cross that bridge when I came to it. I just wanted to get it out of the fish, maybe see if we could get the fish putting some weight on, and then if it started getting skinny again in the future, I'd rethink it, you know, but at least let's see what happens. Let's try to get the fish started and get it better. And I never had any effect whatsoever. So that was going to be my concern with the levamisole if it ever got to that point. With the API General Cure, I don't have to worry about that. It kills it. And if it killed it in the loach that was obviously infected with it, if there's even a chance that any of the other fish are infected with it and hadn't yet begun showing signs or whatever, I don't have to worry about them either. I've now treated this tank, and all the fish that are in it are treated, and I don't have to worry about any more of the wasting disease or whatever. That loach is putting back weight. Again, I've had a few viewers suggest, you know, really pumping them up and feeding them. That's not a good idea. When something's really, really emaciated, just ramming food into it and trying to bulk weight back on can do a lot of damage to the system. It needs to put weight back on gently and consistently. It needs good, healthy foods, not tons of foods. It just needs to put weight back on gently. So it will. It's probably never going to be a really big, full-grown loach. It's spent so many years stunted for whatever reason. So now that it's growing normally and healthy again, it's probably always going to be a fairly small loach. But I don't care about that. I don't, you know, I'm not trying to win the world record loach size. I just want it to be healthy. And now it seems to be. So that's about all I can think of to talk about with my whole experience with my skinny loaches or whatever. Again, it's kind of odd. I'd be interested to hear anybody else's experience, whether you've had similar experiences with other species of loach. Is it only clown loaches that this happens to? Did you have good experiences with the levamisole? Did you get reinfected after using the levamisole? Did it come back? Did it take years for this process to happen? You know, I don't know. This just seems like a sort of unusual kind of chain of events for me. But that's been the experience I followed with my loaches. And that's why recently, you know, when I've been talking about the cloudy water and the algae and stuff like that, you know, I've been saying all along, this loach thing has nothing to do with any of that. This loach thing is its own thing. It's been going on for years. It started in another tank. And again, my tank is finally getting cleaned back up. I did a water change yesterday. We're actually going to be shooting some video about it here in the near future, talking about, you know, just the ins and outs, what's going on with the tank, my plans for it, what I want to do with all the plants that are in there. I'm still thinking about whether I want to thin them out or not, but we'll get to all that in an upcoming video. So make sure you're subscribed. Leave me your comments down below. I'd be interested to hear your experiences. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.